Hello, everybody, and welcome. All right, so let's get this thing rolling here.
This is
Get
this GTP chat party started.
Back it up. All right, so here's what we're at. Welcome everybody to NFP, and we hope you're having a wonderful conference so far. This session is artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. It may seem like unrelated topics, but we're going to relate them as best we can, and we'll kind of get through how we're going to do that as we move ahead. So my name is Joshua Pesce. I have a goofy title, 3CPO. If you want to know what the heck that means, I'm happy to explain, but otherwise just leave it. My title before that, no one understood either, so I figured I might as well have a silly one if no one's going to know what I do anyway. Destiny, how about you?
Hi, I'm Destiny Bowers, so I'm one of our Chief Information Security Officers here at Roundtable Technology. And on the next slide.
Yeah.
So Roundtable Technology is a strategic partner for nonprofits like yourselves, and we are thrilled to be here today to talk to you a little bit about artificial intelligence, how it can benefit you, and some things that you might need to be aware of. So I look at this as the half full, half empty approach. So we're going to start out with the king of optimism himself, Joshua, who's going to tell you all about the fantastic things that AI can do for you and for your organization.
All right. And Destiny, are you actually going to take control? Should I control my own slides? I actually just
why don't you do your own?
I'll stop slide control and I'll hand it back to you. Yeah, when we get there. So here's the video. We're not going to play this for purposes of time because everybody can watch this 2-minute video on your own. I'm going to proceed to kind of talk about some of the points from it. Basically uses this lily pad analogy to describe exponential growth and then why this exponential growth idea is very relevant to where we are at right now with artificial intelligence. So that's in your resources section, and we encourage you to watch that at your leisure. Okay, it's a nice little 2-minute video. So the main point about the exponential growth is that it's very non-intuitive in the sense that linear growth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this kind of blue line, we're very used to that. It's how we age, you know, it's how life works. If we add up things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But exponential growth is not very intuitive in the sense that it feels like linear growth, even slower than that at times. And for anyone who's not familiar, exponential growth is where we're doubling. So we start with 1, then we go to 2, then we go to 4, then we go to 8, then we go to 16, then we go to 32, 64, 128, 256, and on. And the thing that is not intuitive about exponential growth is that by the time you get to, like, you know, the 25th, 26th doubling, you're well into the millions in terms of numbers. And once those numbers get big and they keep doubling, they start going up really, really fast. Now, why?
That's like, how many times can you fold a piece of paper before you hit the moon question?
Yeah. And I think it's like 42. It's like some ridiculously, if you actually could take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and continuously fold. By the way, take a bet if anyone says, you know, dare someone to fold an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper in half like 10 times, you'll win that bet every single time. But if you could fold it 42 times, I believe you would reach the moon. Again, very not intuitive to most of us. All right, so let's continue on. When we look at AI performance, okay, if we go back to before 2000, where we started first having handwriting and speech recognition, in around 2009, we started adding image recognition. In 2016, reading comprehension, where computer systems started being able to read, and then language understanding, what we think of the modern large language models, or LLMs for short, right, started it then. And you'll notice that, you know, this human performance bar right here, right? All these things were well below that. And then all of a sudden, in like the last 5 years, all of these things have suddenly exceeded human performance. There's a variety of reasons behind that, but exponential growth is one of the main reasons. And by the way, this doesn't stop here, right? These things are going to keep getting better and better. The humans, for the most part, are not. But fortunately, we get to use these systems, so we can get better that way. But these systems are getting better and better at an incredible pace. To give you another example of that, okay, this is, you know, a year and 2 months of growth. So Midjourney, when it first was out in March of 2022, that if you just put in cat as a prompt to get an image. That is what it gave you. And yeah, maybe that's a cat, but it's not a good looking cat. And a mere, right, 14 months later, look at how far Midjourney has come. And even now in June, there's been a new release that is another level above this. And
now you get an actual cat.
Yes, it actually gives you an actual living, breathing cat. You put in the prompt and a cat shows up at your door.
Like the ring.
Right. And a quick thing, see if anybody wants to guess at this in the chat. So it took about 75 years before we had 100 million people with telephones in the United States. It took 16 years before we had 100 million people with mobile phones. 10 years for Netflix to get to 100 million users, 4.5 years for Facebook. Any guesses at how long it took ChatGPT to get to 100 million users? We got 6 months in the chat. It's actually 2 months, a mere 2 months before ChatGPT made it to 100 million users. And for reference, by the way, that was around January. It just came out in November. So it was pretty fast that we got to that level.
So I would say for folks who think that no one's using AI yet, or that no one in your organization might be using AI, I think the numbers are telling us they probably are.
Yeah, they are. All right, so let's walk through some of the different personalities and we're oversimplifying for purposes of kind of moving quickly. So ChatGPT, the kind of free one that got to 100 million users, we kind of refer to as the unpaid intern. Really useful, really smart, really helpful. Bing, which actually uses GPT on its back end, we kind of call the research assistant because it does a good job at sourcing the information that it's using to give you your responses. So you can actually have sourced articles that you're writing or sourced research papers. Bard, a bit newer, a little weaker than the others, improving rapidly as Google is releasing updated versions of it. So we kind of call that the second opinion. And then this is what I use is the paid intern. So I shell $20 out of my own pocket a month because it helps me a tremendous amount. Claude is another one that you can do for $10 a month. So there are some paid ones that give you some advanced functionality, some of which we'll show you as we have time. Whoops. So this is a fellow named Tanmay Bakshi, and this is just a short clip to show you how these generative text models actually work, just to demystify it a little bit. He's a 19-year-old genius who, anyway, long story, you can look him up, really, really fascinating guy. My colleague Kim and I had the opportunity to meet him in person, and he actually made this video for us to share with nonprofits. So
you ask ChatGPT, what's AI going to do in the future, right? The way that ChatGPT generates a response for you is actually really interesting. It's effectively just entirely statistical language modeling. Given a sentence or given some sort of prefix, GPT's entire goal, its entire objective, is simply to take those words and predict of all the tokens in its known vocabulary, the probability of any one of those tokens being the actual genuine next token in the sequence. That's all that GPT is doing. What you're seeing right now is a genuine visualization of the way that GPT, specifically GPT-2, would generate a response. It is simply taking words and predicting the probabilities of which word will come next. And the thing about this is that inherently, it is somewhat like a hack. Because language isn't just meant to exist on its own. Language is meant to represent some kind of inner thought process. It's meant to help humans communicate ideas. It's not what enables the ideas to begin with. Animals can reason. They don't have language, right? But models like GPT, they aren't truly reasoning. They aren't truly coming up with new ideas or thoughts or solving logical problems symbolically. What they're doing is they're saying, according to all the tokens I've seen from training so far, this would probably be the next token after this series of tokens. And you can do some pretty incredible things with this.
All right. So hopefully that kind of helped people a little bit. So what we're going to do is do a quick demo just to show how different chats work. So one of the kind of prompts, all right, that I really like to do is something out of, so let me pull this up, is something out of, where you take a book, right? So if you have a book where you think the principles of that book are something that would be highly relevant to what you want to do, you can use that book as a way to get a response from ChatGPT. So what I'm doing is saying, you know, I work for a nonprofit organization, blah, blah, blah. We want to implement some cybersecurity. It's a problem that Destiny and I run into all the time in our work, right? Where we need to implement a bunch of cybersecurity, but the impact it's going to have on staff is something difficult. So this book, Switch, which we love as a kind of change management Bible of how to do that. So we're actually going to ask ChatGPT to use the principles of that book, all right, to design a change management plan, all right, for these things. And so it goes and starts making this plan, all right, based on the principles out of this book. And this is just one of course, nearly infinite number of books that you could choose. So if you have a different book that you like as a change management practice, then you could use that book, right, in your prompt to get ChatGPT to generate that. And you can see that you're kind of producing some really nice things here. Now, this is ChatGPT 4 that I'm using. Wow, it starts doing some goofy things over there. All right. We've got a prompts in multiple places. All right. And what I'm going to do is, just for purposes of time, okay, I'm going to actually, it's almost done. So I'll let it finish. All right, as people kind of continue. But because I'm using ChatGPT 4 on this paid version, I can also grab my link and just share it with folks. I have to wait for it to finish prompting. And what I'll do is drop this into the chat for everybody. And now you can, on your own, just continue to interact. You will need a ChatGPT account, which you could make for free. But once you're logged in, you can actually continue to interact with this prompt that I've set up to see how you find that in terms of interacting with. Okay, so that's just one quick demo we wanted to show, but just a way there's literally infinite numbers of ways. And one of the things that me and a bunch of other folks who work on this stuff have kind of talked about, Destiny, I don't know if you agree with this, is that if ChatGPT and these other models made no improvements whatsoever for the next couple of years, right, they just continued at their current level of functionality, I strongly believe that we would continue to see massive innovation just as people continue to discover different outputs you could get from different prompt architectures and different ways of prompting these engines, because so many humans are using these tools, right, that we're going to continue to see innovation. Now, of course, these tools are going to continue to get better as well. So this gets back to that exponential idea of why this stuff is improving so quickly. Anyway, Destiny, do you agree that we would continue to see that level of innovation? Or
so I think without the addition of new data being fed into their learning to move them, I think I saw a question in the chat about its being only up to 2021. I do think eventually we do need to build that additional information, or you'll start to plateau. But I think that there's a huge amount of time and certainly a lot that can be done with what's there now for a couple of years at least to come, even if there were no new learning fed into it.
Absolutely, yeah. And they are still changing, even though the data isn't getting updated through something called reinforcement through human feedback, where they're continuing to iterate. All right, another use case, I think I'm going to skip this one for purposes of time, but we can certainly give an example. So there's a URL, there's a bunch of these out there, but one is called Ask Your PDF. And what you can do is take a PDF, and in this example, right, we've taken a PDF of this fairly complex privacy law that's going through the New York Senate right now. And for those of us who need to deal with privacy regulations, data privacy regulations in New York, like my Destiny and myself and our colleague Kim, we want to know, hey, what's the impact of this? It's a long read. So we drop it into Ask PDF and then ask for a summary of it. And it gives us this beautiful summary of what is actually in this law, right? Which is a really great use case. These tools are incredibly good at giving you summaries and allowing you to ask questions of large bodies of text, in particular PDFs.
Digital cliff notes, as it were.
Totally, yeah. All right. Another one we're going to kind of whisk through, because I don't want to spend too much time on it here, is the idea of generative image systems. So I'm focusing on these generative AI models, right? So we talked about generative text and using summarizing text through these large language models, but you can also create images. So there's Bing you can use to create images, Canva, both on their free account and their paid account, stability.ai, Dolly, and probably what's currently the best, but also the most legally tenuous is Midjourney. The reason for that is that it's trained on all sorts of copyrighted art, and companies like Adobe never are working to make that more restricted. So if you're generating images from one of these tools and you're planning to use it on your website or in your marketing materials, you might want to double check that you're not violating any copyright laws before.
Doesn't Adobe Firefly, isn't that another one out there now that's doing a lot?
Yeah, Adobe Firefly, and Adobe Firefly does have copyright protection built into it. It's free right now, firefly.adobe.com. It's free while it's in its beta. If you want to really have your mind blown, they have a function called Generative Fill, which is unbelievable to use. It's like if I have a picture of me and Destiny, and Destiny's like, you know what, I don't want any pictures of me and Josh. I think I'd rather have it be me and a zebra. She can just like draw a little circle around my head and type zebra, and all of a sudden it's a picture of Destiny with a zebra instead of with me, or any Spider-Man, anyone she wants. Anyone you want, Destiny? Sure.
It's actually a really fun one to play with for people who are looking to get their feet wet in some of this while it's in beta. Don't upload any pictures that you're concerned about, but you can certainly have fun with that for testing it out.
And then here's one of the things that I personally am most excited about, which is the idea of data analysis with AI. These AI systems really allow us, everybody in our organization, to become reasonably sophisticated data analysts. And what do I mean by that? So I'm going to go and demo a tool called Ask CSV, okay? And this is probably the thing that I get the most, like, people are a little bit blown away at when we do this. So what I'm going to do, I've got this little, IMDb database up here in a CSV. So this is just IMDb movie data. And all I do is I just drag this in, okay? We're going to work. Of course, these things I would never work on that. Usually it's blisteringly fast. Let's try it one more time.
Because it knows you're doing a demo.
Yeah, exactly, right? All right, there we go. Okay, so it's going to load this data. It's going to give me a summary of the stuff that's in here. So it contains information about movies and everything. And then it's going to tell me some questions that I would ask. So I can say, examining the distribution of movie genres. Let's see, analyzing between IMDb scores and gross revenue. All right, so I can say, let's go ahead and do that. All right, and it's going to go ahead and analyze the relationship, the correlations, all right, between the IMDb score and the gross revenue, and start to tell me some things about that, right? Examining the distribution can provide insights, et cetera. And with all of these things, right, I can see, is there a correlation between the IMDb scores and the gross revenues of movies? Do highly rated movies tend to generate higher earnings, or are there other factors at play? And it starts to give me some answers around that. Okay, now on the paid version, you can access the whole database. There are a bunch of other tools out here that do this. This one obviously only works with CSV files, but ChatGPT works very well with what's referred to as JSON or JSON data, which is a kind of less structured data format. But I don't want to, get into Destiny's section, but I do want to say at this point, you want to be very careful, and perhaps maybe not at all, upload any data that is sensitive or protected data to these systems, because that data is essentially becoming part of the public record. You're uploading this data to data sources that you no longer control. So you want to be very careful with everything that I've shown so far, not just this, but also ChatGPT, with not sharing any sensitive information.
Spoiler alerts, Joshua. Don't ruin my part.
I just didn't want to, I don't want anyone like immediately while they're sitting here watching this going in and doing any of that. All right, so let's see. I've got a couple more minutes. So we're going to get very quickly into expanding reach. This is another really exciting area. A lot of this is done through chatbots, but also through machine learning that provides capabilities to do really things that seem indistinguishable from magic, to use the Arthur C. Clarke quote. So researchers are actually, I'm not even joking, all right, able to communicate with whales because they've learned through machine learning a few whale communication sounds. They can broadcast these sounds back to whales to warn them about boats so they do not get caught up in propellers or get injured by boats. All right, chatbots are being used by lots of organizations to scale up capacity to respond to people in crisis or to other kinds of issues. There's a bunch of those I could demo. All right, and you can reach populations that don't have great connectivity through texting and doing texting via chatbots and things like that. So these are all a few different examples of different ways that you're doing this. So Access Social Care has a chatbot that they can interact with to get help. There's image-based classification, so you can get medical help. You can identify sightings of different animals that people can do with, and really incredible things. So the Rainforest Connection has installed these kind of listening devices throughout the rainforests. They use machine learning to detect poachers and people doing logging and things like that, and can send notifications to law enforcement before these things start to damage the environment, which is amazing. And there's all kinds of really, really cool stuff coming. And then before I hand it off to Destiny, I just want to drop this link in the chat. And let's see, I've got 2 minutes left, right, Destiny? So I'm almost good.
You have 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay. And let's go take a look at what this is. So this is a chatbot that I just made to share with everybody today. Okay, and so you can take a look at it and everybody can get to it from the link. So this is made through a platform called landbot.io. Don't go to landbot.ai, it's actually landbot.io. You can use it for free. You can actually experiment with making chatbots like this, and it interacts, and you all are welcome to go through this. At the end of this, if you want to submit it your email, it will send you this 5-slide pitch deck, which is a little framework that we use that, of course, includes some ChatGPT prompts you can use to help with your pitch deck, where if you want to pitch an AI project at your organization, this helps you very quickly put together an effective way to pitch that to your organization. So I won't walk through. The whole thing takes maybe 2-3 minutes for you to go through, and it kind of walks you through how the 5-slide pitch deck works. And then at the end, right, it'll collect your email and send you this link. If you think about how you could use this for your website, from a marketing standpoint, this can be a really fantastic conversion tool you can have up on your website. Or if you need to provide services to people, to provide documents and different kind of things, this is a way that you can provide that and make this very, very scalable. Because of course, these chatbots are available in an infinite number, 24/7. They don't take vacations, all that great stuff. So, and I think with that, Destiny, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, you do have one more.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about my my last slide, which is, if you do nothing else, all right, I will tell a very quick story. I was at a panel a couple of weeks ago here in New York City with about 200 nonprofits, and they're mostly COOs and CFOs and executive directors in the audience. And it was talking about a bunch of things around innovation and stuff. But the point that I want to share is one of the other panelists asked the audience, how many people are using these AI tools, and about half the hands in the audience went up. Let's say 100 hands. All right. When it got to me, they asked me, Josh, what do you want to share about AI? And I said, we saw those hands go up. I said, out of everybody in the audience, how many of you have distributed an AI acceptable use policy for your organization? Only one hand went up. I knew it was going to go up because they're a client that I've been working with, and we'd actually been doing that for their organization. I then asked, how many of you have communicated anything at all to your organization around what you would like them to do or not do with AI tools? Again, no hands go up. And then I said, just for reference, how many of you are actually using these tools yourself to do work? And again, 100 hands go up. And that's, to me, a real problem. It's both a huge missed opportunity for your staff in terms of all the capabilities they could have, and it's, as Destiny's going to get into, a tremendous risk to not be making clear where are some of the pitfalls with using these tools. And with that, Destiny, I am now going to hand off to you.
All right. So, as we mentioned, AI is already here. It's already in use. While cyber criminals have been using bots and things like that for a very long time. With the improvements that we're seeing in these technologies, unfortunately, that can also lead to improvements in how they operate. And I'm pretty sure that when everybody heard about AI initially a year ago and the just exponential growth, as we talked about, this is the first thing that everybody thought was, okay, Skynet's here, they're coming to get us. Well, it's kind of already here, but not in the doom and gloom way, in the taking over the planet way, but it is something that we need to be aware of. It's something that we need to see with a lot of caution, because cybercrime is already something that has exponential growth, as we've talked about in our lily pad model, where including the crypto side of it, we're looking at trillions of dollars worth of cybercrime. And when there's that much money, there's going to be a lot of sophistication thrown at it. And part of that sophistication is going to be through AI. And that is because now things that did require either human intervention or did have bots or anything like that working with it can now be automated. And it's something that when we look at the evolution of cybercrime, we're going to see it evolve along with the positive side of technology. So there's a lot of early adoption that we're going to see where, you can, through image generation, create fake people with fake profiles that are going to allow you to do better social engineering scams. You're going to see things that are better written because of text generation, where you can't say, oh, this is a poorly written email, so it must be coming from a hacker. You're going to see the evaluative piece of data, where all of this data that can be ingested can be used to convert into social engineering attacks. And for those of you who are not as familiar with what social engineering is, it's essentially manipulating human behavior in a way to get you to do whatever it is they want, kind of the way advertising works, right? And that's another thing that we're going to see is more and more generated sites coming up on the internet to compete with legitimate sites that might have misinformation. And one of the things as an organization you'll probably want to also consider is that if you start using AI generated text, that some of the SEOs, that search engine optimization that you are aiming for, Google is not a fan of. So they're actually going to start dinging people for using too much AI generated information. So you really want to look, when you're doing your social media and your social marketing, how that might balance out when you start using a lot of generative information. And one of the things that we see a lot of now is the text generation for phishing. And now you can create that more sophisticated phish where you can take this information, you can hand it over to the bots, you can have it start a phishing campaign, then it can immediately take that information about who clicked, what they clicked on, analyze that, regenerate better phishing attempts based off of that data, send them out instantaneously, and then take that feedback and then do it again and again. So what this says to you as an organization is that you really need to up your game on the awareness for your organization. A lot of this is going to come down to, not that you can necessarily stop the bots, but what you can do is educate your staff and other people in how to start recognizing things, how to verify, how to have checks and balances in place. So as you see the improvements and the more sophisticated attempts at hacking or business email compromises, that you have the learning to help combat that. And that's why that AI policy also comes into place. That's why cyber education will also be something that you want to look at and keep, sort of just hacking away at inside of your organization. There's another thing that it will also unfortunately do when it comes to the voice generation. I think we've all heard of deepfakes, and we've seen the fake Morgan Freeman and the fake Tom Cruise and things like that. But what we are seeing now, unfortunately, is the ability with just a little bit of information that you can find through social media for that to be converted into some new, really not great scams. Some of them are the grandparent scams, where he'll take a little bit of a voice capture of one of their grandchildren. You can find that information online, call them up with that voice, say, hey, I'm in trouble, I need money. And then there was this really horrible one just a couple of months ago where they got a clip of the daughter's voice and convinced her parents that she had been kidnapped. And they got a real call from what sounded like their daughter. And let's see if we can get this video to play.
I could play it for you, Destiny.
Yeah, if you can.
I think I might have to do that part. So
yeah.
Most people in the modern age have some form of an online identity and have probably spoken in some way, in some aspect that's been recorded, especially if you're under the age of 25. So this becomes very, very challenging as we move into a future where we do have these AI generators or synthetic audio when it comes to verification and validation.
Experts caution anyone with the right software can clone voices in just a matter of seconds.
There's a lot of positive and exciting aspects about these technologies, but then of course they also come with a lot of risks and harms.
It's a good thing to remember, and experts say scammers who use voice cloning technology often find that audio on social media.
And so that's something that you want to consider when you are putting things out on social media, is again something to consider in your general use policies, but also now in correlation with AI use and in your personal lives as well, is can any of that information, including my voice, be taken and then converted into something like a deep fake, where, you know, with enough images of Joshua or Joshua's voice, I could create a whole video. And what this leads to is another methodology of verification that you'll want to impart both professionally and personally, which is what we call out-of-band verification. So if you receive a kind of call or something where it's questionable because it's a circumstance like this, kidnapping or asking for money, or anything that you see in your traditional social engineering, that you want to have a different methodology of contacting that person to verify that this is legitimate. Where, you know, if you say, hey, I just got a call from my grandchild saying, I'm in trouble and I need your help, try calling them back first, or calling their parents or something like that to check and see, is this a legitimate request? Because we are going to see more and more of these with the exponential growth and the ease of being able to do these kinds of cyber attacks. It is something that we're going to see a little bit more of. And the other factor is that automation piece, where when traditionally things might have been done manually, where it might have been a person needing to place all of the robocalls and having that interaction with someone to try and convince them that they need to you know, buy gift cards or renew their car insurance or whatever, all those fun robocalls we get. Now a lot of this can be automated, where you can set up these fake calls, you can set up these fake personas, you can set up these fake people to do all of this for you using the AI generation. And so it's one of those things where on the flip side, AI is also being used to combat this. So we're not going to say that AI is on the cyber side only being used for the criminal side. It is also being used for the cyber protection side. But it's a game where, you know, who gets the upper leg first, and we're both climbing up the same ladder, but because we can't be on the same rung at the same time, every now and then someone does get the upper foothold. But we will see a little bit more of some of these automations where you might get someone calling and leaving a message saying, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And this scam did happen to a bank manager. And I think that particular fraud cost something like $2 million because they proceeded with the bank transfer based off of this AI generated call. And so Joshua led a little bit on this one when it comes to data analysis. That's another thing that you really do want to be cautious about. This happened, unfortunately, to Samsung, where somebody took legitimate data, real data, and then fed it into ChatGPT, and then that started using this information in its results because it learns from what is input. So these analysis tools that you have the chat CSV and all of those that will do a fantastic and very helpful job for you to analyze large data sets. You do need to be careful what goes in. You're going to want to anonymize that data. You want to pull out anything that is identifiable. You could replace it with something that on your end, you will know what it means. So instead of names, person 1, person 2, so you'll be able to still use that information, but it won't be used in other people's results. So use the tool, but anonymize it. Don't take anything that's protected data. Don't necessarily use images that are going to be identifiable or that are copyrighted information. So these are things that we're not saying don't use it, but be cautious what you feed it. Like the gremlins, don't feed it after midnight. Don't feed it any kind of personal information or protected information. We also want to take it a little, I think I saw someone throw this into the chat, a little bit about what initially were called hallucinations, but are now really confabulations. That's like the new term for it. I'm sure we'll come up with something different in a little bit. But this is also where we look at the facts, the veracity of what this is outputting. And each chat model does work a little bit differently. So Bing, for example, does cite some of its sources. ChatGPT is pulling from its previous learning and trading, but it is something that you need to take into consideration when it comes to the legitimacy of things. If you don't know anything about a topic and you are trusting your chatbot to be an authority on that topic, don't. You really do want to cross-reference. You really do want to verify information. It is good, very good for analyzing existing information. I would suggest with taking with a grain of salt, it giving you new information. So while it is getting better about some of the confabulations, it is still not always going to be accurate when it is pulling that. So if you're basing something really important off of this, fact check it for sure, because this can have real world repercussions, unfortunately, as some people have found out, and a whole bunch of students in Texas. Now, the other thing where there is something new and people are not always savvy to it, that is where the fakes come out of the woodwork. Would you know, if you've never seen a Rolex before, what's a real Rolex or what's a fake Rolex? I probably wouldn't. And it's the same thing with some of these AI tools, is that everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. There might be some legitimate ones that are going to try and fail. And then the question becomes, what is done with the data that's been fed into it? Or what is that going to get sold? Is that just going to disappear? And those are for the legitimate ones that just may not make it. But there's also a lot of fake ones that are being put out there to either convince people to sign in, to give away credentials, to spend money on them, to collect data and information that's being fed into it. So like anything else, you always want to look at the reputation of a product before you start using it. Seeing is it the most popular kid on the block, that might be the direction to go in at that time. Is the person who's writing this, the developer for it, someone that is known and trusted, or is it just a brand new flash in the pan? So like any software that you use, you want to do a little bit of that due diligence before you jump in with both feet. And this leads us to privacy. So as these technologies are becoming more advanced and they're able to collect and analyze a lot of data, we really want to think about, you know, what we're allowing to be fed into it. And I think as a community, we all really do need to start, you know, when anything's at the ground level, looking at the pressure that we can put on these software companies to say, hey, we want to retain our rights to our information. Like anything else, we want to be able to say, I don't want you to store my information. I don't want you to keep my information, things like that. So when you're putting information out there, remember that it can be taken and used in these AI generative tools. And then also when you're giving these tools information, think about how that might be used, not against you, but to feed into some of the cyber criminal, or at worst, advertising, direct advertising, surveillance, things like that. So we would suggest, along with your AI policy, a few things. Keep that information protected. Make sure that you're fact checking and cross-referencing the content that's being generated. Keep that education up, stay on top of these, because people are going to use it. Anonymize the data. And one of the things that we like to say when it comes to free tools is that if you're not paying for it, you are the product. And when you are the product, what that means is that the tool is not designed for your benefit. It is designed for the benefit of the person who is actually paying for it. For example, Facebook isn't doing things for you. Facebook is doing things for advertisers, because that's where the revenue is coming from. And a lot of these tools, they don't necessarily have someone who's buying them yet, but somebody eventually is going to. And you want to start thinking about, if I'm using this free tool, eventually I know I'm the product, who's going to start buying me? So putting on occasion the investment into the paid tool where you are the buyer, so you know that this is to your benefit, is something to consider as you start using these tools within your organization. And kind of going back to that piece about ethics, and that I do think it's important to have guidelines to protect policy. You want to be transparent if you are using AI tools. If you're using a bot for working with any of your clients, they should know that. And I do think that it's important for us to start leaning on some of these AI producers to say, we want you to also have ethics, respect our privacy, and have safeguards to prevent this information from getting into the wrong hands. So that's my little speech about privacy. So by all means, these are tools that are great. Start using them with caution, like anything else. Always put your toe in the water to see how deep it is before you jump off the edge of the cliff.
All right. And we've got like one question. Thank you, Destiny. And thank you everybody for staying. We've got just a couple of minutes. So we had one question in there, and I certainly have a couple of things. Amy asks, what are the top AI tools you recommend for nonprofits? And also, are there any experts we should follow specifically focused on nonprofits and AI? You want me to take that, Destiny? You want to take a crack at it?
That's the pro side of AI is all you.
All right. So I honestly, I think I would start with the, not to go against Destiny's point. For now, I think some of the free tools like Bing Chat and ChatGPT are excellent ways to get started with these tools. They're not selling advertising off them yet. So right now, I think they're pretty much aligned with what you want them to do, but the data is being used to further train the models. And that's why you can't share sensitive information with them at this time. If you want to get into paid models, then obviously you can go to a paid version of ChatGPT. If you find yourself using it a lot and want a slightly more sophisticated model, the ability to use plugins and lots of other things that we didn't get into today. In terms of people to follow, I'll drop a few. Certainly subscribe to Roundtable's newsletter. We write about it all the time. We just finished a long course for TechSoup on it. So please definitely check out our newsletter, but I will drop a couple links in here. There's a guy named Philip Deng who does some wonderful writing. There's a fellow named Ethan Malik who more about AI and education. And then the Whole Whale newsletter is another great resource in terms of.
And I see one for what policies do we recommend to be adopted. And I believe, Joshua, you had dropped a link in the chat or in the resources, which is a basic.
I dropped it in the chat, and then everybody has a link to the deck, and the deck should have the link to that policy as well. And this is actually something that ChatGPT is excellent at, and Bing as well, in helping you write an AI policy for your organization. So that's actually a great way to experiment with the tool. So
yeah, and you might just want to put an organization and then replace that in the document after.
Exactly. Yeah. Anonymize. All right, and I think that we're at time. So, Dustin, you have any last words for our wonderful audience?
Yeah, I thank you for coming. And like I said, we always try and temper this where I always put a little bit more of the doom and gloom, but it's certainly not doomy and gloomy. It really is exciting stuff. It is really something that every organization should start looking at, because it can very much be helpful for you and your work. And it's out there, it's going to happen, and you may as well be in front of it. Just proceed with caution. That's all.
Excellent advice. All right. Thanks, everybody. Really
Thanks
appreciate it.
all. Take care.